Okay, what I want to talk about today is around the subject of analytics. And this is something that is gaining more and more momentum now as we are gathering huge amounts of data in all different walks of life. We see it through Amazon. They can kind of profile what we do, Google as well in our search profiles. As an educational provider though, I think what we're seeing at the moment is something very primitive in the way that we're capturing data, and even more primitive in the way that we're utilising that to actually make the best of what we can potentially achieve. Just to sort of mention a couple of examples, Roehampton Institute used an early warning indicator system on their curriculum for first year students and managed to improve their retention rates and conversion into the second years by 15% after just having a systematic piece of work in terms of moving that forward. That was going from 71% to 85%, which is pretty significant in terms of cost. The Open University at the moment, they've got their open live examples, or e-learning examples, gaining something like 500,000 hits every day, and they're using that now in their own courses because they know that students are being encouraged to access those resources, and they're starting to use that data to profile exactly what they're doing and how they're working against assignments to really understand what is working for them and how they can best use them. And similarly, in terms of digital literacy, the University of Huddersfield had a vast amount of data looking at library resource consumption, and they matched that against some of the assessment results and found that if students were using the library, they were 7 times more likely to succeed in their exams and actually pass their exams. So something as crude as that, when we start to look at the data, it becomes quite effective, and it starts to be a way of motivating people to engage with something as this. So there's 3 ways really, and this is the thing, analytics people think it's purely around assessment and improving conversion of student results. And that is obviously one of them. But there's also in terms of the learning experience, and I think sometimes some of the things, like the example Sean's just showed us, sometimes just things like that where you can start to capture data of how people are engaging with different spaces, like in the University of Huddersfield example, it's quite valuable because then you can start to sort of invest more strategically. And finally, in terms of resource management, so in terms of managing your resources more efficiently, large-scale systems, incredibly important. So how can that be done? Well, the first thing that's very important, sorry, I've forgotten my slide after all. Before I move on to that, I shall just show my thing, and say that actually what is happening here is we are capturing the data effectively. It's a bit blurry. Hopefully this is incredibly blurry. This is kind of student data. But what we are capturing is a university, so we're not alone in this in respect that we're not capturing data, but we're capturing in different silos. And what we have here, we have absence records. What we have here are student grades, and what we have here are, in the new system, the analytics from Canvas about how students are using the system in terms of their interaction with discussion boards, page hits, and also their assessment submissions, whether they're late in providing, but also how their scores relate to the rest of their cohort. So we're getting this kind of data, but quite often across the whole university in general, it's just not joined up. We're not using it well. So what are the steps that we would have to take in order to make this happen? The first is looking at data governance and making sure that the data we're capturing is high quality, but also can be used effectively. We're allowed to use it and start sharing it effectively. The second is that we collect it in the most efficient way. We are using logging tools. We are capturing the data we absolutely need to be able to make a difference. The third is using business intelligence to harvest that data effectively. And then it's to integrate these systems to make sure that they are pushing themselves into some data warehouse. And finally, it's around acquiring the skills to be able to use that as effectively as possible from a research perspective, but also from a management perspective. Final 2 that actually weren't included in my list in the first place, but one is about a culture of using this kind of approach and actually valuing this kind of approach. Not seeing it as being a penny-saving exercise, but as actually it is improving the educational experience, improving the retention of our students and their collective experience. And sadly, having the relevant investment to actually make something like this happen if we really do want to value it and we do think it's important to make sure it can happen. Final statement is really just in terms of who it would benefit and what the timescales are. The thing we've got to bear in mind is actually this kind of business intelligence, when we're using Amazon, we can see instant benefit. It can suggest books to us straight away that are actually of use. And that's the kind of result we want for our students, for our administrators, for our academics, for our managers. Sadly though, then the next down the line is that the academic staff themselves, who perhaps will take longer to gather this data, to see the data. Then we have the managers and the policymakers who will take longer to decide on this, and obviously the return will not be as visible to the students as potentially we would see through Amazon. So the velocity of change is different between these users, but I think the potential benefits are equal across all of those. And I think that's where, if you start to unpick what analytics can do, you can start to see real benefits at all levels if it's properly joined up and aligned and used effectively. We're not doing this very well at the moment, I think, in the university. And so my talk today was really just to say, how can we start something like this across what we're doing and across what the university is doing? Okay, just thought.